One of the bigger lightning rods I think is out there is Michael Pachter, an analyst who has a very keen eye for things that are happening in the industry and definitely likes to tell it as he sees it, which seems to upset many people out there. And being here at GDC with a lot that's happening in a transitional video game industry, I had to sit down and pick his brain. So happy to be joined by the one and only Michael Pachter, Senior Research Analyst at Wedbush Morgan. Thank you so much for your time.
Adam, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good. So, okay, this is the Game Developers Conference. And
so what are we doing here? That's
exactly.
a great question.
We are conferring. So we have the C part of GDC all under control. Let's talk about actually more on the publisher side of things, because that is interrelated with the developers. We have Riccitiello, who just stepped down from EA. We also have the president stepping down from Square Enix. There's this real sense of anxiety at the major publishers that somehow AAA titles just, they cost too much money and they're too uncertain if they're going to make any of that money back. I mean, is that what you're seeing from your vantage point?
I think Riccitiello leaving was more a function of what happened over the last 5 or 6 years as opposed to recently. Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly Medal of Honor was a disaster, but I think his leaving was more related to Star Wars than anything else. I mean, they spent a ton of money on Pandemic and BioWare. If you kind of fast forward 5 years, the Pandemic entire organization's gone. The BioWare founders are gone, and probably the crown jewel that drove the acquisition, Star Wars: The Old Republic, is not making any money. So I'm not sure that it's AAA titles. In that case, it's just one. Square Enix, I actually don't get the kind of scapegoating of Tomb Raider. I mean, hearing that they were disappointed in, as far as I know, 3.5 million units of sales in a month, that's awesome.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah, it does to me too. And I don't know how that compares to the height of the Tomb Raider franchise, but that franchise was left for dead. And Carl and team at Crystal D have done a phenomenal job. They should be really proud. Not only is it a really good game, but that's a lot of units. So if Square Enix can't make money on 3.5 million units of Tomb Raider, then their CEO should quit. And good for him, but that's not because the team spent too much money.
It's not the game.
It's not the game
at all. It's the management of the product.
Right. I mean, again, I think that that's one of those Eidos Montreal things. I think it sounds to me like the Japanese guys trying to lay the blame on the acquired company, not on themselves. The real problem at Square Enix is, we get Final Fantasy once every 9 years or something. They're worse than GTA, with the frequency of releases.
And it is declining in terms of its interest. I mean,
right.
they're not putting out a quality product like they once did.
It just hasn't changed. Yeah. What changes is the Roman numeral at the end,
which sometimes has a dash and another number.
Yeah.
Which is really, really good if you want to reach a broad audience.
That's what the Wii U needed.
Yeah.
A dash and another number that would have reached a broader audience.
But this sense, I believe it was Jade Raymond recently made a comment that the market really can't sustain more than 10 AAA titles, that people's pocketbooks are just so limited that, the past quarter, we have seen a major release every single week. And you can just sort of tell from the get-go, it's like not all of these are going to find an audience, or at least make their money back. Are there too many games in your estimation?
No, and I think that Jade is a capable studio head, probably a good business person, not the right person to be evaluating the overall potential of the market. I think the market will support as many high-quality games as it supports high-quality movies. We get about 140 movies a year released. We're probably getting closer to 200 games, so there are a lot of games. But there are really only about 25 or 30 films that are really successful. I think there's room for about 25 or 30 games to be really successful. And I don't know how you measure success. If Jade is talking about 10 million unit sellers, then yes, she's right. But it seems to me that games are pretty profitable typically at 3.5 to 5 million units and very profitable above 5. And the market will lap those up if they're good.
Back to sort of what we saw in this quarter. obviously a lot of the game companies, the publishers, their fiscal year ends are at March 31st, and so there's kind of a race to get something out there that they can generate income on. But we did end up with an absurd number of titles. I mean, was that too much, or is there ever too much? I mean, it is $60 a game, and you only have so many people that are going to sort of plunk down, for even 2 games within a 3-month period.
Well, there were some that were bad. Aliens: Colonial Marines was bad. Dead Space, I thought was a very good game, and again, probably sold a respectable 3 million or so, but not as good as the prior versions. Crysis was a very good game. SimCity was a very good game with problems. BioShock is phenomenal. I mean, I kind of think BioShock had people hold back. So back to Jade's point.
I was actually just about to ask you about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you only have $60, you know you're getting BioShock. But I'd wait until we see how BioShock sells before saying that this quarter was a flop. Ideally, if there are 30 really high quality games a year that should sell well, they come out every 1.5 weeks or 2 weeks, and you kind of get them spaced out throughout the year. It just doesn't work that way. The publishers kind of, as you said, bunch at the end of the quarter because they're trying to make numbers. I think it's great that they push Fuse out. Now, Fuse isn't going to be a big giant seller, but good that it got pushed out. It's May 28th. It's got its own little window. Like, what else is coming out then? I think
right, because GTA is now moved all the way to September.
It has a chance of actually succeeding, and I think that's great. I hope it's a good game. I like those guys.
So, especially here at GDC, we're seeing a lot of mobile. There's a lot of indie developers. The word disruptor, I'm almost tired of saying it out loud, but I mean, is the role of mobile inside of the larger console game space really taking away money? Is it taking away sort of game time? Are people moving to these cheaper, smaller games?
Yes, they are. I think that most people look at the time available for playing games as being limited, and that anything that impinges upon, anything that adds to your gaming experience takes away from your other gaming experience. So let me make this easy. There's 168 hours in the week. For those of your viewers who can't do the math, that's 24 times 7. And most people sleep about 40 hours, work or go to school about 40 hours. That leaves 88 hours. Shower, eat, get yourself to and from work, maybe let's call that another 28 hours. That leaves you with quite a bit of time, like 60 hours to screw around. And that's how much time we actually spend screwing around. That could be consuming entertainment, including film and music and games. It could be watching, your kids play sports, or it could be participating in sports yourself. But that 60 hours of leisure time, I think, is what's available. And so if you spend an extra hour playing mobile a week, it doesn't mean that one of your 10 hours, let's say, playing games is sacrificed. It means one of your 60 hours of screwing around is jeopardized. And so, sure, 1/60th, of those 10 hours, 10 minutes, sure, I buy into that it'll reduce that. I also defy you and your viewers. Have you ever been playing a game and you went to bed past your bedtime? So sleep sacrifice. I mean, again, you and I have been around the block. I remember frickin' Civ 3. I don't think I slept more than 2 hours for 4 days because I couldn't stop. There was always one more thing I wanted to do. And so I frankly believe that gamers will sacrifice everything else. Sleep, work, showering. We all have been there too, in order to keep playing the game. So when someone says to me, does mobile cut into available time for hardcore games? I apologize because I know you're not, but that's just stupid.
So do you say, I don't know, 5, 10 years down the line, that we'll still sort of have silo types of games, that mobile will be its own space, console will be its own space, that there won't be some attempt to try to integrate it all, and so it really does live under one banner?
It's a technology call, because if you had asked me probably 8 or 9 years ago if there would be such a thing as the smartphone or the tablet, I would have said it's not possible. I think that within the next 5 years, smartphones will be as powerful as the PS4. I mean, I think they'll have microprocessors that are that powerful. So the answer is no, we won't need consoles. if someone figures out how to integrate the experience and allow you to connect to your TV, what does that really require? You know, Bluetooth connection and a controller. I mean, you can do it. So technologically, we'll be there pretty quickly. There are a lot of guys who have a lot to lose if that happens. The console makers, for sure. And I'm not sure that you'll have people making console quality games on spec to load into the Android store or the App Store, because they aren't going to be sure if they'll get the promotion. So the publishers add value because they promote, but technologically, this is all blending together. And technologically, I mean, truthfully, you should have, in 10 years, you should be able to pull out your phone, pop it into a docking station, and this is your internet access for your entire house. Every device in your house is going through this to a tower. Data caps will kill that, but it could happen. And if that happens, all your entertainment, movies, music, games, TV, come in through this device, and you can play a game on your TV, you can watch a movie on your TV. That technology is almost there now.
I mean, I think one of the biggest problems on my show, Address the SES, and I'm meeting people out there. I think there's a gentleman from Tennessee who was explaining what his internet speed was. And that, is it really now more of an issue of the infrastructure, something that might need some government subsidization, to just kind of get this level of speed so that cloud computing is viable?
I forget that, unlike all the other game people I talk to, you're actually a tech geek. So I'm glad you asked that question. All right, so I'm going to give you a lecture on something I know nothing about. Make sure you got that. I know nothing about this. About 20 years ago, when cell phones first started kind of being popular, we paid roaming charges. And the reason you paid roaming charges, is that you had a phone with, at the time for me, LA Cellular, and that's the only phone I could get. And LA Cellular only had towers in LA, and so when I went to San Francisco, it was AT&T, and I had to use their towers, and LA Cellular had to pay for the bandwidth. So they charged me. The FCC, which at the time the lawyer was Mike Gallagher from the ESA, this is unbelievable. The FCC decided it's a really good idea if we encourage the cell phone companies, the carriers, to build more towers. So how are we going to do that? So what they did was they said, you can't charge people for roaming. You cannot charge them by the minute. You can charge them more for cell service, but you can't bill them by the minute. They can roam all they want, and the quid pro quo was, we're going to let you all compete for all people. So that's why we can all now get AT&T service or Verizon service or Sprint or Nextel, and LA Cellular got bought. Well, what happened was, if you were a Verizon customer and you went by an AT&T tower, Verizon had to pay for your usage, not you. And Verizon thought, well, I'd rather not have to pay for that, so I better build a tower over there because Adam's over there all the time. And so Verizon's building towers in AT&T territory, AT&T's building towers in Verizon territory. Next thing you know, we had the infrastructure. It worked. Just substitute cell towers for internet in that last discussion. That's going to happen. Somehow the FCC is going to get involved. My prediction, Microsoft's actually going to lead it with the next Xbox. And the next Xbox is going to be an internet television tuner. It is going to allow a company like Comcast, who has a limited geographic area, just like the old mobile carriers, to sell television services outside their cable jurisdiction through the internet. And that means that suddenly Comcast, Cablevision, everybody are all going to compete for all customers with DirecTV and Dish. And the winner in all this is whoever provides internet service. AT&T, Verizon are going to do the same thing. Fiber everywhere. Cable is going to be allowed to go everywhere. It's the best thing that could happen to our country, because we will suddenly be, 90% broadband enabled. DSL will be over. We will get rich content anywhere we want on any device. And we're going to pay more as a society, but individually we're not. More people will get it. So I actually think
the Xbox is going to save America. I like this.
But you said it takes government regulation. It really does. Yeah. We need to get over these old territorial boundaries. And the idea that the government did it with cell phones tells me they can do it with internet. And when they do, it's going to be a great thing.
Okay, with that mention of the next Xbox, in our part 2, we're going to follow up on that. So we'll stop on this and scroll down and hit play on the next one.